I cannot stress that enough. That is going to save you so much money.
If it's meant for you, it won't pass you.
God, I should have studied today, but I didn't.
Practice, practice, practice.
Hi everyone, welcome to the very first episode of Dear Premed, a podcast dedicated to helping aspiring physicians navigate the journey toward medical school. I'm your host, Melody Tran, and for today's episode of Ultimate Mcat Prepped, I welcome Rishitaa and Faith, former president and vice president of Alpha Epsilon Delta.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Let's start by getting to know a little bit more about our guest. Rishitaa, can you tell me about your experience with the MCAT and something you wish you had known before taking it?
I think I originally had signed up for the MCAT last summer, right? Summer of 2023. I was scheduled to take it in September, but when I think like 2 months out, I was like, I'm just not ready because, I gave myself about 3.5 months to study for the MCAT, but I feel like you have to at least prepare like 1 month in advance just so you get your study like habits in line and understand how you really want to tackle the exam. So I ended up rescheduling it for January, and I took it in January this past year in 2024. And then, I got my score back. I was happy with it, but I just knew like with the knowledge I had, I could do better. So I'm planning on retaking the MCAT.
That's wonderful. I like that how you like took a step back to reassess yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know a lot of us are afraid to do that. Like we just wanted to we're gonna score good on the first time, but it's all right to,
Mm-hmm.
have that score looking better in the second time than just taking it in one time and not be happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Faith, how about you? I want to hear a little bit more about your story.
Okay, so for me, like Melody said, my name is Faith. I'm currently getting into my last semester at the University of Houston, and I'll be joining Rishitaa as the post grad. But yeah, so my experience with the MCAT started off 2 summers ago, so not last summer, but the summer prior, because I planned to go straight through. And then once I took my diagnostic score, I was like, that's just not feasible for me. And I would need a lot more time considering I hadn't taken the core things on the MCAT, such as biochemistry. I didn't finish organic chemistry too. There's just a lot that I felt like I needed to still do in order to give myself the best shot possible. But I finally scheduled my MCAT for January of 2024, and I took it and I loved my score. And similar to Rishitaa, I thought I could do better. So I did sign up to retake, and I retook it in May, and I ended up with a point lower than I had scored. So that's also a very real reality that I'm gonna definitely go more in depth about throughout the rest of the podcast. But yeah, that's been my experience so far.
Taking the first time and you saying you really love your score and still giving it another shot, that changed. But I do know that is it because of the change in the exam itself that could have happened?
For me, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was about the change in the exam. It's just about how I prepared, right? So that first time in January, I had taken a lesser course load in the fall semester, deliberately knowing that I was going to be studying during. But because I thought that I was going to be a one and done, my spring semester ended up looking a lot different than the fall. So I had a lot more responsibilities. There's just a lot more going on. So I didn't have the time to restudy and take it. So I was mainly focusing on the last 2 months, which I would not recommend to anyone because it was very stress filled with final exams also around that time and an MCAT a week later. Just a lot of stress that's now in hindsight unnecessary.
Those were really, really good information, and I'm glad that you were able to share that with us. I want to dive into a little bit more of like the MCAT strategies. What would you guys say is the most like crucial aspect of like MCAT prep?
I think that there's a very common misconception, right? If you know the content, you'll do fine on the exam. But I think that's what really gets people, right? Because you'll know that like some of the smartest people are taking this exam and they're really struggling with it because it isn't entirely about content. I would say that maybe like if you are scoring above like a 500, 503 on your practice exams and you're still like, okay, I need to go back. I have a content gap. I need to learn that. I don't think it's about content anymore. I think it's about just doing the questions, getting the format of the MCAT, and strategizing on how to use your, practice time and really honing in on practicing questions because there's only so much you can learn from reading the chapters over and over again, right? After a certain point, you have to learn from applying that knowledge and seeing where your application has gone wrong. I think UWorld does this really well, or any sort of third party resource that gives you, live time solutions when you answer a question and they tell you exactly why the right answer is the right answer, but they also let you know why the wrong answers are the wrong answers, right? So you're learning so much more through just that one question rather than sitting down and reading an entire chapter, whereas your weakness may just be one paragraph in that chapter. So I think it's like content review is to identify what you're doing really bad on, and then you have to supplement that with a practice questions, which is why I think 3 weeks of like 3.5 weeks of content review is good enough. Like you are going to feel like you have no idea what you're getting into after at the end of that content review point. But I think that that's a good place to be at, right? Because you're going to supplement that with your questions.
Thank you so much. I do like believe that content review is like the core, but as of like I'm currently like just like, content reviewing right now. I'm not planning to take it till the end of like the fall. It helped a lot. So it was just like, reviewing, and I thought like, oh, I need to read every single chapter in that book. But as I kept reading, I feel like as I finished one book, I'm forgetting about the other book that I
Yeah.
so I feel like just getting through it and then practicing those questions over and over again, I started to notice like similar questions start to pop up on the practice exam itself.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Faith?
So for me, the main thing I think a lot of people focus on is, like Rashida said, content review. I think there's okay, now this is a hard truth. You're never gonna know enough for the MCAT, and that is my tried and true statement. Anyone comes to me asking, like, oh, what do I do? I feel like I'm missing this and this and this. I feel like there's just so much information tested on that one test that you're giving yourself a disservice thinking that I have to learn every single concept and fully understand it. I think just going straight into practice after the 3 weeks that Rashida recommended is so important. And I'm not saying like after every one practice question, you read it and understand why I missed it and whatnot. No. Give yourself 25 practice questions to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're done from those 25, go in and identify your weaknesses because as you're taking them, you are learning. That's like a learning process. So as you take one question, they might correlate, and you're like, okay, I know from my previous question that this cannot be it. So with taking 25 questions in a row, you're able to spot your mistakes easier and score better. So practice, practice, practice. And I also want to talk about how you practice. I know a lot of people take full length exams, but I fully recommend half length exams because not everyone has the 8 hours to fully dedicate, every Saturday or, a couple of days a week to taking a full length exams. And they're also very expensive to come across. And you don't want to be repeating the exact same full length exams because at some point you're just doing guesswork or it's becoming a memorization tactic rather than you actually learning. So if you can find a third party platform that has half length exams, definitely use it. I personally used Altius and they had a bunch of half length exams and they had exams based on like just a car section or just like a biochem section. I'd say those are your weaknesses. Just take exams more focused towards that, and you should be okay because you're gonna practice so much.
I wanted to ask, like, would it be better, like, from very early on, as your content reviewing, taking like half practice exam during that time? Would that be able to help me, like, kind of like go back and forth with like the content as well?
Yes, I'd recommend that. So, like, let's say you're doing the Kaplan books, right? So you're done with your Kaplan books. You've taken about a week to go over, and you've gone through the hard things that you need to get through. Take a psych soc exam, like fully on that Kaplan book, or a biochem exam just on that book. So yes, you've practiced, but you've also gone like long term with like an hour and maybe 50 minutes on just that one subject. So you're training yourself for the actual exam.
I do want to mention to our listeners, AED actually offers books that you guys can rent out. If you guys have any questions or want to like borrow those books, I'm gonna have our website link in the description as well as our Gmail. Go ahead and send in those questions. You can also leave it in the comment below, and I will get back to you guys on that. As Faith did mention, I want to get into both of your scheduling for studying in the MCAT. Like, what did it look like on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis?
Just took the MCAT, right? In January, I had given myself that entire fall semester to study, but that seems like such a long length of time. It's like, oh, from September all the way to January, that's almost 6 months of time to just, sit down and study. But obviously, it's not going to end up being 6 entire months of time, right? Because like I was, president of AED, I was doing research 10 hours a week. I also had 21 credits that I was taking. So like I made this dumb mistake of, really having a very heavy fall semester. And I knew that one of my biggest priorities that entire year was to do really good in terms of my GPA, because I was taking like hard science classes and I wanted to finish off with a really strong GPA that year. I got to that goal of doing that, right? Of having a really good GPA that I could graduate with. But at the same time, because I was putting in more time and dedicating more effort into my classes, that meant something else had to give, right? Because I'm not superhuman. Like something else had to give, and it couldn't be research, it couldn't be AED, it couldn't be my classes. So it was the MCAT, and I was spending less time on the MCAT than I liked. I was only doing 2 days a week where I actually had to go on campus and attend classes, but I also had a bunch of like asynchronous classes I was taking, so it took up a lot more time than I anticipated it would. And I ended up only being able to study like 2 days per week, which is totally fine, by the way. Like, I think that it's crazy to tell someone, like, oh, sit down and study for 8 hours a day. I don't think it's feasible. I don't think it's healthy. I think that it's better to do like 3 hour sessions and then take a break, however long you need to, go back to another 3 hours. And I constantly battled with this feeling of, having this sense that I wasn't doing enough if I wasn't doing like long sessions of studying. But that's not true. I was more productive when I was doing shorter sessions of studying because I wasn't, my attention span was there for the entire time. What I would do is so the weeks that I had midterms, right? There would be like one week where all my midterms would fall like around the same time. So what I would do is that week I would only do cars passages and I wouldn't do any studying. The other weeks, right, I would do full-time studying where I would study on Mondays and then Fridays and Saturdays. And then I would leave the other days because I had a bunch of assignments due on Sunday and I just knew that I wouldn't be able to do any studying on that day. And I was like, that's fine. I'll focus on my assignment. So I studied Monday, Friday, and Saturday. And the reason I have 2 days adjacent to each other is so I can take a full length on one day and review it the next day. So my full length would be Friday, and then I would review them on Saturdays. And then on the weeks that I had midterms, there was no point in feeling like, gosh, I should be studying for the MCAT. So I just gave myself a break that entire week. And every morning I would wake up and I would do like 3 cars passages, and that was my prep because I was still actively doing something. But I enjoyed cars. Like, that was one of my favorite sections. It didn't really feel like work to me. And I was like, I can do this. This is still counting as practice for me, but it's not something that's going to eat away at my energy to put into my classes. So that's really how I worked around it. I think that giving yourself the flexibility to move things around is very important, because if not, you're constantly going to be hung up on that. God, I should have studied today, but I didn't. Your mindset should instead be, oh, I didn't study today. I'm going to move things around tomorrow so I can get some of that done. That flexibility is really important, especially if you're trying to study during the semester.
I like how you mentioned that, like, you didn't like make yourself feel bad about like, oh, I didn't study today, I will study tomorrow. Keeping that mindset of continuing rather than just like stopping at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
I know that your schedule sound like a lot, which was probably more helpful to like the juniors or the seniors that are gonna take the MCAT, because that's the reality of a lot of our schedule.
Yeah.
Because not all of us are gonna be freshman or sophomore taking the MCAT. It's mainly like we're taking the MCAT while taking biochem or
Mm-hmm.
organic, and it's like it's probably gonna be super busy, but the way you manage your time, the way you move things around to accommodate for the MCAT should be priorities. How about yours, schedule, Faith?
Yes. So for my schedule, I started similar to when Rashida started, so we're kind of going through it together. And like she said, being vice president of AED, I was working two jobs. I was a medical assistant and I was also a barista. So those were the two jobs I was doing. And I was also doing research, meeting professors, building these relationships for letters of recs, and all the other things that comes with being a college student. I was still taking my classes and honestly just going through it. So that semester, I started off in August, planning, like Rashida said. And I took the time to plan because I'd already tried to do this the summer prior and it hadn't worked for me. And I knew deep within myself that if I didn't come up with the plan, it wasn't going to work. So I made a week to week plan, giving all my responsibilities the time and the attention that they needed. So it would be, I'd wake up in the morning and I had a cars alarm. It was an 8 a.m. cars alarm every single day. And some days, of course, I was not making it. Some days I will throw my phone across the room. But on the days that it did work, I will wake up, I will start cars, and I only did a passage a day. So that was my repetition. I wasn't gonna do more than one passage a day because I did not have the time, honestly. And I just felt like for cars, it's a reading comprehension thing. And once you get the two tricks, how you read the question, how you scan the passage, like the things that you're looking for from the question in the passage. Once you get that down, doing it every day really builds up that repetition and it's easier for you to do it more long term. So I'd wake up every day and do that. For background, I'm a psychology major, so I knew that the psych and social aspect of the MCAT wasn't something that I had to practice every week, like my biochem or my chem phys section. I just knew that within myself, I needed to give more time to those sections. So throughout the week, I knew Tuesdays and Thursdays were super busy, so I wasn't even gonna try that. But Mondays and Wednesdays was when I'll do like Monday chem phys, Wednesday biochem. And I did this interchangeably because I wanted to see how I was scoring on both individually, and I didn't want to put both sections on the same day, not to confuse myself, because I'll be picking things from one part of the MCAT to another part of the MCAT, and it's very confusing to do it that way. So I had to separate the days like that. And once I did that, I felt like that really helped me get my momentum up. I wasn't, in this dread thinking that every day I had to do physics because it was scary, honestly. I don't like physics that much. But it builds up this momentum like, okay, I'm working on biochem today. These are my things. These are my tasks for the week. This is what I need to get down. And this was early on in my studies. Once, November hit, October hit was when I could stack those classes together because I had more repetition on my practice questions to where I could have done a biochem and a chem phys practice together on the exact same day and still being fine. So like Rashida said, those 3 hour blocks were great. I don't have a good, attention span. So for me, I did 5 hours, but in those 5 hours, I wasn't like fully on my computer. It was like, I'll do 45 minutes, 15 minutes off. And for those 15 minutes, if I need to scroll aimlessly on TikTok, if I just need to, check messages, call a friend, call my family, because doing MCAT stuff is so isolating from the rest of your friends, especially if you don't have that many close friendships where we're all doing it at the same time. Because your life is still going on. There's still things you need to catch up on. You might need to have a friend who's going through a really tough breakup. So you really still need to be there for the people in your life. But I found that, blocking 5 hours, 6 hours of my day and telling people like, hey, I'll call you on my break, but I can't text you right now was super important for me. And then once we got to the end, I was taking full lengths every week, honestly. And I ended up taking about, I want to say 6 full lengths. And a piece that Rashida touched on that I want to talk about more is reviewing those full lengths, because I think we're so tempted to just take them and forget 1000% that we did it, because it's a traumatic experience in the beginning, to be very frank. So you just don't want to think about it. But I think going in and reviewing, why you got what you got wrong and why that answer was right, it's very easy once you review that to spot your content gaps. And then you can go on maybe YouTube and watch a quick video on it. But do not touch those Kaplan books again once you're at the point of taking full lengths back to back to back. There's no point in going back because it's so much information, whereas YouTube or other platforms have that in such a short amount of time. But yeah, that was my strategy.
I have a question on the full length. Which type of full length? Like which like did you take it from UWorld or did you take it from which resource did you guys
Right.
using?
Yeah. So for me, I had a full, like an all-inclusive self-paced plan with Altius. So that came in with, I believe, 8 full-length exams. Um, And then I had the half-length exams as well as the subject-specific exams. So that was all included in my package deal with Altius. But I did those, but towards the end, that is when you start taking your AMC full-length exams, because no third party will even compare. Some of them are harder, some of them are easier. So it's better for you to just go straight to the source and purchase that AMC bundle.
Good. I do want to mention that AD do have ATS as our sponsor. So if you guys want like discount or potential like a free course, please come to our first GVM in the fall semester. I will list the date in the description as well. Um, I also like that you mentioned holding yourself accountable every morning at 8 o'clock, but setting a timer as a reminder. I'm not a morning person, but I will definitely try that in the afternoon, maybe before bed, like definitely doing those. And I think when I sleep, it will load in the back of my brain.
Right, exactly. You have time, or whenever you know that you're going to be studying. Like, I had, as a medical assistant, I had clinic some days at 8 a.m. So I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna wake up at 8 just to do that. Or I'll be already at clinic. So, whatever time works in your schedule. Plan the MCAT studying around you and don't try to plan yourself around it, because that it's gonna mess up your mental health.
Wanted to ask during the exam, like the day of the exam, what are the tips that you guys could give us, and like how do we go through that exam? Like it's an 8 hours exam, so and like what to do during that break and before and after the exam.
Okay, so take every break they give you. Like, every single break, even if you feel like you don't need it in the moment, like that first 10-minute break, the 30-minute one, and the last 10-minute break, you really do need it. And they're placed there for a reason. So take every single break they give you. Use the restroom if you need to. And also, you have to be very mindful about the meals that you pack for the day of the MCAT, right? Because I think it's very important. Like, don't take a bunch of sugary snacks to the MCAT and then try to make your way through the exam with that, because it's gonna crash you out and you're gonna start feeling tired towards the end, and that's not something you want, especially because you're so tired already with using your brain as much as you are. What I did was I packed a protein shake for my 30-minute break, and that really helped me because protein keeps you full and satisfied for longer. I wasn't feeling hungry or tired as much, and then I also know that the morning of the MCAT, like I had a really strong like coffee. Like, it was instant coffee. I don't have an espresso machine, but it was like 3 scoops, nothing else, like no milk, no sugar. Like I just had that because I was like, I'm gonna need that energy to get through the exam. And then I just packed something that I knew I would enjoy but was still healthy. So I had something to look forward to, because having things to look forward to really does help you like get through the horrible sections that you may experience. And then I think that the only thing that I looked at, like the day before the MCAT, I wasn't really studying. I was just, going through like last minute things, like doing breathing exercises, like watching these videos on like what to do if you're stressed or if you're, anxious about it. I really could not sleep that night, even though they recommend getting like 8 hours of sleep, but it was not happening for me. And I was like, whatever, that's fine. And then I also I also had like a cheat sheet that I knew that I was going to write down as soon as I got there during my tutorial section, right? So what I did was I looked at that the night before I went to bed, and then in the morning I woke up a little bit earlier, just, sat down, like relaxed, looked at that sheet and really like made sure I knew where everything was so I could replicate it once I got to the exam, obviously without the sheet of paper, but off of just my memory. So I wrote everything down and that really helped me. And then I think that that was like the only like ritual I did, but I also really think it was helpful that I tried to replicate my full length settings as exact to the actual MCAT that I could. Whenever it comes around to doing your AMC ones, I don't think you should worry as much about third party because at that point you're just trying to build stamina. But once you start doing your AMC exams, I think it is very useful to do them at the exact time that your actual MCAT would start. Give yourself the breaks the exact way the actual MCAT does. And, eat the meals that you would on like the day of the actual MCAT. You want to eliminate all possible variables and make it as controlled as possible, right? So you're not too like anxious by the unfamiliar that you're going to experience. And also the day before, go visit your testing center, walk around, get a feel of what it looks like, because that will all really help. Because when you get there the next day, you're going to be like, okay, like I know this place, I've been through it before. I'm just going to go in there, take the exam, and walk out.
Like replicating the setting and the environment for me, I feel like it helps me more when, like, even before like any test, I write the formula out and like have everything
Mm-hmm.
replicated so that when I'm going in there, I'm just like kind of like brain dumping in onto like a
Yeah.
scrap paper, and it just helped like memorizing, and as I go through those questions I could just go back and having that
Mm-hmm.
same feel of like it might even like trigger like a memory response. Maybe I don't know the question, like the answer to that question, but since it's the same environment, it will give me off that vibe or play like, a little image in my head. But that was really useful tip. And you mentioned eating protein. Would like, are we able to bring like what type of like kind of food? Are we able to bring like full on meals or just snacks?
Yeah, so there's no microwave or anything to heat up your food or
Yeah.
anything. Have a locker. So I would recommend packing like sandwiches.
Mm-hmm.
So I packed a sandwich. In my exam day, I would say kind of prepping for the MCAT was a little different than Rashita's because I like to shock myself into things. So I wanted that MCAT experience to be totally new to me, in the sense of like the time that it was and all of that. So I didn't take my full lengths at 8 a.m. I knew that wasn't feasible for me at all. And I knew that just the pure adrenaline from that day would have kept me awake. But I woke up that morning, I want to say around 5:30, and I just had to sit with myself and you have to psych yourself into it, right? You're like, okay, I've been waiting a long time to do this. Let me go and do it. So I had a latte that morning with one shot of espresso. I remember this exact, with one shot of espresso, and it was like a brown sugar latte with one shot of espresso. And then I had like a quick breakfast that was carb focused. So I had maybe two eggs and two pieces of toast. So that was like my perfect exam breakfast. And then I went into it knowing that I will need an energy pick me up. So I brought a Celsius. And right now, Alani actually has like 100 milligram things of energy. So if you want to do that instead, I would recommend that. So I drank half of my Celsius at the end of my 30-minute break, just because I knew that I will need that caffeine boost. If anyone knows me, they know I love caffeine. So I had to, I knew I would have needed something to pick me back up, because after eating that sandwich or whatever you bring for lunch, you can feel yourself getting full and just getting like low. So you want to make sure that you have everything. Bring nuts. I brought they're like these honey roasted nuts. So that's what I packed. I packed honey roasted nuts, and then I packed a chocolate, like a Kit Kat, for my last 10-minute break. And it was very strategic, right? Like you don't want your crashes to be while you're in the hardest sections, but you know that you want to look up to something nice and sweet. So that's what I packed for my MCAT day. And that strategy, I think, really kept me sane throughout. I didn't feel like I was gonna fall over at the end of the 8-hour day. And even while I didn't start my MCAT practice at 8 a.m., I would start it still in the morning. So I was still getting that feel of during the exact same time that I'll be working on these sections around this exact same time. So let me prepare myself. So with the AMC full lengths, definitely try to replicate as much as your brain will allow it you to. I just knew in my heart that I needed to be shocked.
Really good. And I'm really glad that you guys had like a very like different approach to the MCAT so that our listeners can have like both sides of the story. But it was still very the same in the aspect of like when you're taking, the AMCs, you gotta like put yourself in that feeling and like kind of talk that same mindset you are taking while you're taking the MCAT. As we wrap things up, I wonder if I want you guys to like, share any little small tips or any little, tricks that you guys use.
Used a bunch of other third-party things, and I believe she did like a whole. I think it was like cost effective, correct? Where you used a lot of the things available on the internet that wasn't all in one pack. And I
Yeah.
definitely go more in depth about that.
No, I definitely think like with the amount, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So I think that with the amount of money that you're already pouring into like MCAT, because you go and you're thinking like, oh, it's a $300 exam, like that's expensive, but it's whatever. It's $350 to get to my dream of being a physician. I can pay that. But you also have to consider cancellation fees, rescheduling fees, fees for the AMC bundle, unless you're in the fee assistance program, which I also recommend people check out before you schedule your MCAT. The fee assistance program is there to help individuals that have a family income under a certain level. And you can go onto the AMC website, just look up fee assistance program, and it'll tell you the exact margins. You apply for it. If you apply and you get accepted into the fee assistance program, I believe your MCAT is 50% off. So it's like $170 instead. You get the AMC bundle for free. And then on top of that, whenever it comes time to applying to med school, you also get I think 10 med school applications for free. So it's a lot of, really helpful things that I recommend that people check out if they feel like that's something that they would find useful and be accepted into. But yeah, so you have to consider a lot more cost than what it looks like on the surface level. Any practice tests that you want to take, any, courses that you want to do. I really, if someone does take a course, I definitely do recommend more self-paced courses, and not necessarily ones that like have you sit in a classroom and do things, because classrooms aren't catered for each person's learning ability, and this exam is so much about learning the way you learn and not necessarily how is taught in a classroom. But yeah, that's really up to each person's discretion, whatever works best for you. And on top of that, I think that another thing that's really important is having those free resources, right? So there's actually a Notion that I found whenever I was scrolling through for resources on the MCAT, and that Notion had compiled like all of the free resources available on the internet and just put them all in one sort of web page. And I can actually share that with you, Melody, if you want to give that to people that are listening or someone asks you about it. And that was really helpful because I would just go in and be like, okay, time to look for half lengths. And I would go to the half length section and I would find what I needed. Time to look for full lengths that weren't the AMC ones, because you want to save those towards the end, right? Just so you're getting that real practice more closer to the exam date. And then I think that some other tips and tricks is to always have something to look forward to. Like, I cannot stress this enough, right? You cannot put your life on pause for the exam. Like Faith said, like when she was studying, but she was still there for her family, her friends, whenever they needed her to be. And it's so important to keep that in mind. Like even the day of the MCAT, like after I got out, I was like, I just want to sleep, but I scheduled a dinner because I wanted something to look forward to, like at the end of that exam. So, I went to dinner that night. It was really fun. And then I also like at the end of like really hard weeks, I would call my friends up and I'd be like, I just need a pick me up, like, and just like chat. And then, they would be, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but my computer just did something weird. Okay, sorry about that. So, I would always like call them up. So I had a really good support system, which was super helpful. Like my parents were there for me, like especially my mom, on days where I would be like the night before, I would tell her like, I really and no, I can't get up tomorrow to my alarm. Can you please wake me up? She would be there to like wake me up and be like, okay, time to study. So having that support system, I was very grateful for, and that just made the ride so much more easier than it could possibly have been. And then, just having things to look forward to that avoids burnout. It keeps you motivated. And that's really like my strategy while I went through the entire thing.
Thank you so much for that. And definitely, I will have what Rashida mentioned, and hopefully we can have it also in the links below. She mentioned like having a very good support system. Like I also can't stress that enough. Like even just with school and everything else, like it's important to also maintain a balance with your life. I know it's like the MCAT is super stressful, but your health, your connection, and your families also matter in all aspect of your life. So please, 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 like be aware of that, and still stay healthy as well. Any more tips you would like to add, Faye?
Yes. I think I want to talk more about timeline. So, I think a lot of people don't give themselves grace, in setting up a timeline. I think you need just add in an extra 2 weeks to a month for you to get acclimated to the test and for you to prepare yourself, right? Because a lot of people look at it as this really big bad wolf and everyone's scared. Like I can speak for myself. I was terrified of this exam. And I for a month I would just look at the stuff and go, "Oh, I don't think I can do that. Oh, I'm not doing that. Oh, that's not going to work." And I think you need to plan that into your study schedule because you need to give yourself grace, just time to get used to it. And also, I would like everyone listening to know it's not a race at all. Like everyone is going to get there. If it's meant for you, it won't pass you, right? So don't think or don't compare yourself to any friends or anyone on the internet that you think is doing this because there's so many stories of, people taking gap years if it wasn't your time yet. And, just take time for yourself. If it's not working, don't force it. Do not force it. But
I
yeah, that's,
definitely like have that sense of like having that guilt, like because I always
yeah.
mention like, oh my God, this summer I'm gonna study on the MCAT. I looked at it and I was like, I'm terrified. I'm not, maybe not this summer, because I still have some like prereq courses that I still have yet to take. But just every time I say I'm gonna go into it, I open the book up and then I close it right away. And I was like, another time. And but then I beat myself down and feeling really bad, like, oh my God, I said I was gonna do it and like I'm not doing it. And like I was like, I'm already gonna set a time to take it at the end of the year. And if I'm not studying now, like and the end of the year come, how am I gonna be able to take it? And I think
Mhm.
when you're not ready, having a setback and then rescheduling it, or like don't schedule it until you're fully ready.
Exactly.
That is another really important thing, actually. I'm glad you brought that up, Melody, because anyone that comes to me now for MCAT advice, the first thing I tell them is first, the MCAT, scheduling for the summer dates, it opens up in February. No,
It was
for
like
the summer dates, it does
March.
open up in February. Oh, yeah, February, March, it opens up for the summer days. And then for the winter ones, it'll open up in September, October, right? I think October, around late October. So you're going to be so tempted to go in right when sign up opens and sign up for that exam. Because in the back of your head, you're going to be like, oh my God, like when my time comes around, if I don't sign up now, they're going to run out of testing spots and blah, blah, blah. Like it's going to be a big issue. I promise you spots will open up. I promise you. So you are not going to schedule that exam until you are making what you want on an AAMC full length. Like I cannot stress that enough. That is going to save you so much money. Just 10 days, until the last day that you can schedule the exam, you're going to take that AMC full length and you're like, okay, I feel ready. I'm okay with the score. That's when you're going to schedule that exam, right? You do not want to schedule it before you are ready because I promise you, if you're not ready 15 days before that exam, I hate to say it, but not much may not change in that 15 days to where you'll miraculously get the score you want, right? And I know everyone loves to go on Reddit and see like the miraculous stories about people jumping 20 points in the last 15 days. They are the 10 people out of the millions that take the MCAT every year, right? And feasible to expect that big of a jump on your exam.
Thank you so much for both of you for sharing your stories, your insight, and your experience. I'm sure our listener have a lot to gain from your experiences. It's a pleasure to have you both on the show, and thank you again for taking the time to be here today. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.
And that's a wrap for our very first episode of the Dear Premed podcast. Both Rishitaa and Faith have shared so many wonderful tips and tricks. It was such a pleasure having them both on the show. Thank you so much for taking your time to join me today. And to you guys, I hope you guys found today's episode helpful. If you have any questions, please reach out to our email at aed.uofh@gmail.com and check out our website as well. All of our social media handles linked in the description below. If you have any topic you would like for me to cover, please leave it in the comment section and comment what your major is. Until next time, keep studying, stay motivated. Sincerely, from your reporter, Melody Tran.